Hi there guys, welcome back and hello if you are new, and today we are going down the cosmic black metal wormhole. As ORANSSI PAZUZU have got a brand new album out. So after what was basically my number 2 album of the year in the form of Mesterin Kunsi, their previous record, it's now been 4 years I think, I'm pretty sure it was 2020 when this was released. Since that record, and now we have got Muuntautuja, the brand new album from ORANSSI PAZUZU. So if you're not familiar with ORANSSI PAZUZU, they are an avant-garde black metal band that are this sort of amorphous blob of ambient, psychedelic, progressive, really horrifically distorted and sort of brutal in that sort of respect, and quite honestly one of the most unique bands I think out there. In terms of Muuntautuja, I think this record really adds electronics way more to their bow. It was kind of, I think, being experimented more with Mesterin Kunsi, but with this record, it really is kind of like a focal point, specifically noise. I think, this record is very noisy. It sounds like a noise record in certain places. When we get to sort of like the end of Valutus, which this sort of critical mass sort of happens, and then it just sort of implodes in on itself. It just feels like, the samples, the distorted vocals and industrial drums just sort of, like a black hole just kind of collapse in on themselves, and then we're left with this really high pitched sort of noise, and it's really, really disconcerting. However, sometimes I think things can be a little bit more subtle as well. So there's kind of like a subconscious dread, I like to call it, which is this sort of, it's sort of like a pulsating sort of sound, which is pretty much omnipresent on Muuntautuja. It really does kind of make you feel uneasy, even when ORANSSI PAZUZU are kind of giving you a little bit of room to breathe, so to speak. I also really like the fact that there aren't necessarily as many traditional black metal style drum beats, for example. Ikikarme and Hautatuli have got a combination of jazz drums, but then also some kind of trip hop beats as well, which again, I think adds to that sense of darkness. I like the fact that this record is very black and white, or black and grey, I should say. The album cover is really quite, I guess, brutalist in certain ways, in terms of like the colour and the choices and stuff. But also, there's so much going on there that you can't really sort of decipher it. And the more you look at it, the newer sort of images you sort of conjure up, and that's kind of quite similar to how the sort of music works, I think. I also like the way that the record ends. Vieriva Usva is very different to how the ending of Mesterin Kunsi was. That was very sort of like straight up black metal blasts and all that sort of stuff, whereas like this one's a little bit more subtle in many ways as well, which I really, really enjoyed. But without a doubt, my favourite instrument on this record, I think, is the distorted piano that we've got here. It's kind of a brush that paints with so many different strokes and I think this is one of the things I've always loved about ORANSSI PAZUZU, is how they can sort of manipulate instruments to kind of create something that is totally different. But what I really like about the piano here is it's a beautiful contrast against this sort of very binary, very sort of, black and grey, sort of very harsh sounding noise, but it can make things very dreamlike. On Vaitelu's bridge, it definitely made me think that, but then it also kind of has these sort of like, almost feels like Freddie's nails kind of scraping along the wall. And Ikikarme, I think, is without a doubt probably my favorite track on the album, because it makes you feel like you're almost in like Hannibal. You know, it's very horror driven, it's very sort of film noir, it's incredibly atmospheric and very cinematic. But again, because of what they're doing with that piano, just letting it be a piano and then sort of changing it and molding it, it makes it sort of way more disconcerting, which I think is really fascinating. I think, you know, vocals are obviously a big thing in ORANSSI PAZUZU, and they are very nightmarish. You know, there's, again, a lot of the sort of changing of like Voitalu, for example. You know, it makes you feel like you're just kind of trapped inside this entity and it's trying to sort of get out, as did Ikikame as well. But it's this sort of subtle nuances and the different changes that I think are really noticeable, and that's kind of it's almost like The Thing, you know, where it's got like different faces that sort of pop up with these different sort of vocal performances, I guess. And I think also, as much as this record is very sort of industrial and quite sort of, even the way that the record starts, actually, it starts with this like bim, 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 and if you've seen the band live, you know, that's very much kind of sometimes how they start. You know, it just starts from like one section and then builds and builds and builds. But it has this industrial feel to it, and a very sort of cold electronic, but also sounds very organic at the same time and allows all of the instruments to breathe. So Muuntautuja certainly isn't easy listening, and I don't think it was as immediate as its predecessor, but this record is absolutely brilliant. There's so much to kind of learn from it. The more you listen to it, the more you enjoy it. And despite it being, you know, not as immediate, I think it's definitely kind of gotten just as much of a hold as Mester and Kunsti does. And in terms of a rating, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10, genuinely. It's definitely going to be in my albums of the year for sure. It's a really interesting record. There's so much depth to it, so much to explore. And I like the fact sometimes when I listen to an album and I'm kind of like, I'm not really that keen on this, but you keep listening to it and it keeps evolving and changing. And now, it's one of my favorite albums of the year. So I hope you guys enjoyed this album review. Let me know what you think in the comments underneath me. I always love hearing what you guys think of the records that I review. And please do hit that like and subscribe button, because it does really, really help. And it's been really crazy, especially with Blood Incantation and stuff like that recently. I've got a lot of new subscribers. So hello, new subscribers. And thanks again for subscribing. Other than that, I will see you guys very, very soon for more interviews and album reviews and all that good stuff. Take care, my friends.